Hello, everybody, and welcome to another tantalizing episode of your favorite podcast, Nessie's Dead, the show where we take a deep plunge into the darker sides of life, exploring all of our darkest curiosities. Well, do you want to know what I have to talk about today?
I do. I'm very curious.
Haunted and cursed objects.
I love it already.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually really excited about this one. This is my thing.
Yeah, I think there will be some stuff you haven't heard. If not, maybe all of it. I specifically chose things that were not the super talked about ones. Some of them are very famous. One of them specifically is very famous. But
did you leave Annabelle in?
Oh, she's not in.
Oh, okay. So
that one's too famous. That one, and Robert the Doll.
Oh, I love him.
That one's very interesting. But it's so talked about when it comes to haunted objects.
Yeah, those are the main ones you definitely hear about.
So I was like, okay, I got to find something that's not so obvious. And actually, when I'm looking through lists of haunted objects and cursed objects, this one kept coming up, and I kept just passing it. I didn't think much of it for some reason, but then it kept coming up on like every source. So I was like, okay, let's just look at it. Obviously, It's pretty popular. And that specific object, I decided, is worth talking about. And that's going to be the first one. Is James Dean's car. Do you know this?
I know a little bit about it being cursed. A little bit of the story. I think I've heard the story mentioned in banter of podcasts, but not everything. I just know it was like cursed because maybe he had said something about it or somebody had warned him about the car before. Didn't he die in the car?
He did.
Okay. Isn't it like once he did, like it's always been everybody dies in the car, or am I wrong about that?
Yes and no.
Okay.
The car was wrecked when he died.
Yeah.
But the parts were what the energy seemed to follow. So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
But for starters, for anybody who doesn't know, which I hope everyone does, but for anyone who doesn't know, James Dean was a famous actor. He was born February 8th, 1931, and he has become a very prominent pillar in American pop culture, very much so a big part of that classic old Hollywood world, which I love so dearly.
You do.
And he became very well known for his good looks, but it was not only his good looks and acting roles that ended up becoming cemented into American pop culture. It was also his car. So his car actually ended up being nicknamed Little Bastard and has gone on to have quite a reputation.
And what kind of car was this?
It was a silver Porsche.
Ooh.
It was very pretty.
Fancy.
Yes, he actually had quite the love for cars and for racing, and he was an avid racer himself. He purchased this silver Porsche on September 21st, 1955, and his plan was to drive out to Salinas, California from LA, and he was going to join the Sports Car Club of America. He was planning on joining a race using his new car, the Little Bastard, to do that said race. On the night of September 23rd, 1955, James Dean went out with some of his friends, actors Thelma Moss and Alec Guinness. They went out to dinner, and he decided to show off his fancy new car, the Little Bastard. While he was doing so, Alec Guinness starts to get a bad feeling, and he said to James Dean, quote, "Please never get in. It is now 10 o'clock, Friday the 23rd of September, 1955. If you get in that car, you will be found dead in it by this time next week," end quote.
Why would you put that in the universe?
Well, I guess because he felt it. He was like, wow, something feels really off. I have to say something. I guess he was very adamant about it, and James Dean was like, yeah, whatever.
Terrified if somebody told me that. I would be like, well, really?
Same.
I would you'd have to quit your job. Like, you'd be like, well, I can't drive.
Oh, I would absolutely listen to that.
Oh, and God, me too.
James Dean did not, though. And he actually died in a car crash exactly 1 week later,
Oh,
just like the friend had said. It was literally the next Friday.
how awful. Imagine being the friend and you're like, dude, why didn't you listen to me? I bet everybody listened to that friend after that. I bet
Oh,
every single person was like, am I going to be okay? And he's like, I wouldn't go to that party. And they'd be like, absolutely, you got it.
I'd hope everyone would listen.
Gosh.
Well, so the car was a total loss. It was pretty beat up, pretty mangled up. It was sent to a salvage yard where it would then be sold for parts. It ended up being purchased by a racer, William Estrich, and he put the engine of James Dean's car in his car. And there were some parts like for the suspension of the car that went to another racer's car. This racer was Troy Lee McHenry. So we have two racers, both of which have parts of James Dean's car in their race cars.
From
And
the
they
little
are
bastard.
what?
From the little bastard.
That little bastard, which literally it really claimed its name.
Ooh.
It was the little bastard actually before any of the bad stuff started happening, which is interesting. But they're both in the same race. They both died in that exact same race. They both crashed and died, and they both had parts from James Dean's car. Well, after those wrecks, the little bit of remaining parts that were left from the little bastard were then sold to George Barris. And this included 4 tires, the pretty beat up body of the car, and a twisted frame. So 2 of those tires were sold to the Los Angeles chapter of National Safety, and they were put on another car. Those 2 exact tires blew out on that new car, causing a wreck and injuries to bystanders. And then the body of that car was placed on display, and it kept falling off of the display space, injuring more bystanders. And at one point, it even killed a truck driver who was hired to move it. It crushed him.
Oh my God.
Yeah. All of this is from James Dean's car.
That is so bizarre. Like, it was like literally trying to kill people.
Yeah, it was like, okay, I'm off the display now. Let's see what havoc I can create.
That's wild.
But then the body of the car was later put into storage, and it randomly caught fire for no known reason.
This thing is like really evil.
Yeah, it's just going after. At that point, it's trying to kill itself, it seems. It just bursts into flames.
Oh, I don't know if it was like, I can't do anything in here. Maybe I can just catch this place on fire.
Oh, yeah, maybe the fire will spread. Well, anyway, that ended up being the last, quote, known attack of the car. Because in 1960, it was being transferred once more to another location. But during the transfer, it vanished, and it's never been seen again.
Oh.
Which I thought was a very weird way for the car to end itself. It just disappears. So for all we know, it was put onto another car or melted down and went on to cause havoc in some other vehicle.
Or swallowed back down into the depths of hell, which it came from. Yeah, that's my theory. I'm sticking with it, too.
So this next story is going to take us over to the UK, and it starts in the early 1700s. It is the story of the Busby Stoop death chair.
Okay, is that the one
Damn it, you know this one too?
Is it in a bar?
It is. A pub, to be exact.
A pub. Okay. I don't know the story behind it, though. I know, is it like if you're not allowed to sit in it because you'll die?
Yeah, it's literally that simple.
Okay, but enlighten me on why.
I will.
Okay.
So, Busby Stoop is a public house with a tavern in North Yorkshire, UK. The story starts in June of 1702. Thomas Busby gets in a fight with his father-in-law and ends up killing him. After killing him, he decides to head down to his favorite pub and sit in his favorite chair at said pub, as one does after they kill someone.
I was going to say, as one does.
Yeah. The police track him down, And when they arrive, Busby refuses to get out of his chair. He ends up being forced out of it and ended up being convicted to death by hanging. However, right before he's executed, Busby places a curse over that chair. I don't know why he was so in love with this chair, but he was.
That was his spot. I wonder if anybody sat in it when he pulled up to the pub. I bet he was like, get the out of my chair.
Probably killed them too.
Maybe. I bet people were like, you don't sit in that chair. That's Busby's chair.
Well, they had to start saying that after a while because right before he was hung, he said that anyone who sits in it would die. And this chair remained in the pub. So there are a lot of deaths associated with this chair. I'm not sure when all of them happened, but during World War II was when people started really recognizing the curse.
That's a long time after, isn't it?
It is. Now, I don't know if like people died in the chair and they were like, oh, coincidence, or they didn't realize it was the chair, because there are a lot of deaths associated with it. But World War II was when they started documenting it, and they were like, hey, there's something weird with that chair.
You would think they would have taken it away.
Yeah, after someone said, like, placed the curse on it, and then after the next pub goer sits and dies in it, I would be like, okay, chair's gone. You guys lost your privilege.
Imagine the bad luck. That'd be my demise. I'd be like, hey, guys, if you could make sure you reserve that chair for me for when I get there.
Yeah, it's not the Busby, it's the Helen chair. 18 people died here? Yes, I'm signing a lease.
Yes. It's not haunted at all.
So during World War II, some soldiers would come to the pub, and the ones that sat in the Busby chair would not return from war, sadly. And in 1967, 2 Air Force pilots sat in the chair, and they both died in a car wreck upon leaving. Then in 1970, a man sits in the chair, and later that day, he fell into a hole at a work site and died.
Oh, my God.
There's more. 1971, a roofer sits in the chair and then dies while working on a roof because it collapsed under him. Then the cleaning lady who worked for the pub tripped and happened to fall into the chair, and she shortly died after from a tumor.
Shut up.
Yeah, so by 1978, the owner was like, I'm going to move this chair to the basement.
It took him that long to be like, well, maybe we shouldn't let, our pub goers sit in this chair.
And he doesn't get rid of it. He just places it in the basement. But a delivery man who was making a delivery at the time, he's in the basement. He sees the chair, and for whatever reason, he sits in it, I guess out of curiosity or to take a break. And then he died upon leaving in a car wreck.
I'd also be scared if you got rid of the chair, like you would die.
Oh, ew, I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
But the next move was he does get rid of the chair. He actually donates it to a museum. But the chair still resides in this museum, and it hangs from a ceiling super, high enough up to where no one can sit in it. And it said that there are 60 deaths in relation to the chair.
Oh, my God. I was going to say, I'd be tempted to, but after you just said 60, maybe not.
Yeah, when I first heard it, I was like, there's no way. But then after all the stuff that's associated with it, I'm like, there's got to be some connection. That's too much weirdness.
That's 6 or 5 from that time span. It would be like, okay, coincidence, but 60?
Well, it's weird because it seems like it really got going during World War II, and it just kept going. I don't know if maybe the war woke it up. I don't know. I don't know how that works.
I don't know either.
Let's get into the next story, the next item. So for this next item, we're going to talk about the Bassano vase. Do you know that one?
No, okay. I do not.
Good.
Yay!
I didn't know this one either. So researching it, at first I was like, I kept just skipping over it. Same with the James Dean car. I was like, whatever. Yeah. But I kept coming back to it. So I was like, okay, let's read about it. And when I read about it, I was like, oh, this one's really interesting. So this one's got even further back than the 1700s. This one starts in the 1400s.
Oh, geez.
Specifically, the 1400s in northern Italy. A woman was set to get married, and at the time, a common wedding gift for a bride was an intricate, oh my God,
We can't talk tonight. It's okay. It's okay.
intricate vase.
Intricate.
And this one woman, on the night of her wedding, was gifted a vase. It seems pretty normal, but typically, like I said, the vases were very decorative. They were very pretty. This was a very plain silver vase. And she sees it standing outside her room, and she's like, oh, well, it's not super grand, but, oh, it's, my wedding gift. But she did not know who it was from. So she takes it into her room and continues to get ready. Later in the evening, the ceremony is supposed to start, but there's no bride. They're all looking for her, and the groom goes up to her room. He walks in to find her laying on the floor, dying and clutching onto this silver vase. It turns out that she was actually murdered. She died a few minutes after he got to the room, but she had been murdered by some unknown killer.
Is it the same person who left the vase?
I would assume so. They have her funeral. And post-funeral, the vase makes its way to a family member for safekeeping. However, a few days later, that family member winds up dead as well. And then they pass the vase off to another family member. And they then die. The family starts putting two and two together, and they start becoming a little worried. And they're like, okay, something's going on with this vase. So they reach out to a local priest who instructs them to bury it on sacred ground. The main idea was that whoever gifted it to her had placed a curse on it for some unknown reason. And so in the ground, this cursed vase goes. So they bury it, but inside the vase, they put a note that reads, quote, "Beware this vase, it brings death," quote.
But you would have to pick up the vase and handle it and everything to even read the note.
Yes, so they should have put it on the outside of the vase. They should have put the vase in a box and then put a note on the box, but they put it inside. They actually sealed it inside before burying it, but that is where it ended up being left, and it rested in peace, the vase.
Until
1988.
I knew it was coming. I was like, that's not the end of this story.
It's like Jumanji.
Yeah.
It is dug up by an unknown man who ignores the note, and upon finding it, he decides to bring it to an auction house where it ends up being sold to a local pharmacist. The pharmacist then dies 3 months later, and the vase is sold again. This time, the vase is sold to a doctor. This doctor winds up dead a few months later. Obviously, this vase has something going on with it, and nobody wants the vase anymore. Like, the doctor's family, they're like, okay, this is creepy. Actually, they were telling the doctor, like, don't buy this vase. There's a weird history to it. He's like, I'm buying it anyway.
Me.
So, yeah, that's you're the doctor. So the vase develops quite the reputation, and nobody wants it. Museums are turning it down. Everyone's turning it down. However, there's an archaeologist who has some interest in it, and he ends up purchasing it. Only 3 months after obtaining this vase, he also died. So the archaeologist's family is terrified, and they decide to toss it out the window. When they do that, there's a police officer walking by, and he grabs it and brings it back up to them. And the family is like, no, we don't want it. And the police officer's like, well, you threw it out the window. Here it is. You can have it back. And they're like, no, you take it. And he takes it. I think they warned him about it, but for whatever reason, he stayed alive. But he does try to take it to a bunch of different museums and whatnot, and they all declined. They all were like, we know the history. He ends up burying it in a lead box in a cemetery, and it has not been found. And that lead box in some cemetery is supposedly where it still remains. So our next and last item we're going to discuss is the Dybbuk box.
Oh, no.
Do you know the story of it, or?
A little bit from YouTube things mentioning it and stuff, but not really. It kind of depends on so many different ones.
There are a bunch of different ones now.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, into the story of the Dybbuk box we go. So the term Dybbuk, so I've seen that it's pronounced Dybbuk and Dybbuk. I first learned it as Dybbuk, so that's how I'm going to call it. But this item is rooted in Jewish lore. It is said to be the most haunted object ever in the whole world. So that's fun.
I knew it was Jewish. I didn't know it was considered to be the most haunted.
So a Dybbuk, it comes from Hebrew, and it's a word meaning to cling. And it is said to be a dark spirit that is a dislocated soul of a dead person. And it is known for possession and attachment, which makes sense with this story. It ends up attaching itself to a specific box. And in Jewish lore, an exorcism would free the person of possession from the Dybbuk and send the Dybbuk back to where it came from, which is referred to as the other side. However, stories say that Dybbuks can come to the mortal realm, or the realm of the living, by riding on black dogs and black cats.
Interesting.
So it's really just considered to be a dark spirit.
Okay. And they take the spirit and they trap them in the box, or the spirit's attracted to the box?
Well, so the spirit is the Dybbuk, and the Dybbuk possesses and attaches to things.
Okay, so it would attach to the box.
Yes. Some sources suggest that it can be trapped in a box. Others say that it chooses to attach to a box. But in this particular story, it is about a wine cabinet box. A very small, like you probably would only be able to fit maybe 2 bottles of wine, unless it's maybe deeper than I think it is. Like, think like a little wardrobe.
Or like one of those tiny mini fridges that you can fit like 3 or 4 cans of Coke in.
Yes, it's like that, but old-timey and wooden with 2 little doors.
Okay.
And this all starts in 2001. It is purchased, actually, the box is purchased by Kevin Mannis. Now, Kevin Mannis was a furniture refinishing store owner, and he originally bought it from an estate sale in Portland, Oregon. The box supposedly had been owned by a woman who was a Holocaust survivor, and she had passed at 103 years old.
Goals. Are you one that wants to live like a really long time, or do you want to like live until life is uncomfortable and go, or do you want to be that person that's, dear God, why won't they leave? That you're still like hanging on.
I'm so afraid of death, so I'd want to live as long as possible, but I'm also nervous I'm going to be some like, I don't know, like if I'm like struggling when I'm old, I'd want to die, but I'm also
Depends on how
like
painful it is.
Yeah, like if I like do it right, it'd be fun to live a long time, I guess.
I can see that. I don't know, maybe that's I tell myself I don't fear death because I feel like I'm pretty comfortable that there's something, but it's always at the very back of your head that's like, what if there's not?
Yeah, we don't like it's so scary.
But then it's like there's so much proof in the world, or I know that you're like, no, but then it's gonna get in the back of your mind of what if that's all just a trickery of the mind and just it's not. Yeah, it gives me anxiety. Maybe that's why I'll be one of those old women that they're like, she's never gonna let go.
I feel like a lot of the times when people live really old, they're doing really well and they're still walking a lot of the time and cognitive pretty well. And I feel like if you take the right intentional care of yourself, it would take you there, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I still try to work out and drink wine.
Yeah, that's why you drink wine.
It's for your health.
Yeah. So this lady had owned this box. According to her family, as long as anyone can remember, she had it. And they noted that she kept it closed and out of reach at all times.
Oh, so she probably knew.
Yeah, supposedly she knew something about it, but no one in the family talked about scary stuff happening. So maybe, I don't know, like it's maybe like the box belonged really to her and it didn't like going to anyone else.
Maybe she just didn't go around like bragging about it. Maybe she just, because that would also make people curious to like want to open it. Maybe she just like didn't say anything about the box because she didn't want to draw curiosity.
Maybe. Well, seeing that it had been in the family for such a long time, Kevin Mannis almost passed up on it, and the family was like, no, 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 no. Take it. We insist. So they
Ooh.
did seem like they wanted to get rid of it. That makes me think they maybe had some idea there was something creepy with it.
Yeah, maybe.
And they did
Maybe
tell him, don't
maybe it was
open
like
it.
one of those unspoken things within the family. You know,
Uh-huh.
but you don't talk about it and you don't mess with it.
Yes.
That makes more sense.
So supposedly Kevin opens the box after purchasing it, even though he was told not to. And inside of it was an old goblet, 2 locks of hair tied with string, pennies from the 1920s, a dried rosebud, and a granite statue engraved with Hebrew writing. Now, I did not find anything about that statue and a translation of the writing. Those are the contents of the box that I found. So he takes the box to his store where he plans on selling it.
That's kind of a move to do. Like you were told, don't open it. He's like, I'm going to open it and now I'm going to sell it.
Yeah, probably for way more than he paid.
Yeah.
But he puts it in the basement of his store, and then he runs out to run some errands. But he was called by an employee asking to come back. The employee was like, oh, come back to the store, because she kept hearing screams coming from the basement.
Shut up.
So he returns back to the store and goes into the basement, and he's hit with the smell of jasmine flowers, and he notices that all of the lights had busted.
So the demon is out, but it's crazy that the entity would have waited till then and not like when he opened the box.
Maybe it had to like acquaint itself?
Maybe, or maybe it was just waiting for the right time.
Yeah, but instead of selling it, for whatever reason, he decides to give this box to his mother as a gift.
What? He must have hated his mother.
Well, and he literally purchased the box with intention of selling it at his store, but then he's like, you know what? Maybe Ma would like it.
Wow, he doesn't really like his mom.
Well, she doesn't like the gift. After receiving it, she was left alone for a moment with the box, and upon returning, Kevin Mannis notices that she's sitting in a chair, just crying by herself and unable to speak. And she was seemingly frozen to the chair, like she was in shock.
That's terrible. What did he do?
He takes her to the hospital, and it turns out that she had a whole stroke. And she ended up losing her ability to speak for quite a while. And so while she was in recovery, she was given a board so she could write on it, so she could communicate with people.
Yeah.
And on the board, she wrote, "No gift. Hate gift."
Oh my God. I wonder what happened to that poor woman.
I know. And why did it just like go crazy on her so quickly?
When she gained back her ability to talk, did she say anything about what happened, or
I'm not sure. The only thing I know that she ever said was "no gift, hate gift."
Ugh.
But Kevin ends up taking the box back. He takes it back to his store. A couple purchases it. So this older couple purchases it, and within a week of buying it, they bring it back. They don't even bother to bring it back into the store and ask for their money. They just leave it at the doorstep. Oh. And on the box, they had a note that said, "This has a bad darkness."
Ooh, if you know, you know.
Kevin also tries to give the box to his sister, and she also returns it to him, saying the doors on it kept opening and closing by themselves.
Does this man like hate his entire family?
Right? It's like, why do you keep passing the scary ass box that gave your mother a stroke to everyone? And
now you're like, "Here, sis." Oh, he must have really like not liked his sister if it came
or
out.
The old couple, yeah, just go ahead and buy it.
Well, he doesn't really know them, but if they brought it back and like left it like that, but then he was like, screw my sister, she'll love this.
Yeah. Well, if someone's like, "Oh, this has a bad darkness," I'd be like, "Oh, good gift for Helen."
Thank you. Well, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
As long as I don't die.
Yeah. Well, anyway, not long after taking the box back, Kevin begins seeing shadow figures. So he actually takes it from his store. So he keeps getting it returned to him, and he takes it home. I wouldn't personally have done this.
Not after so many things. Like, I like a good little spooky item, but if people are dying or people are like returning something specifically, yeah, no. I'd be like, oh, put it down like a dark basement and put a bag over it.
Or bury it like in the Bassano vase story.
Yeah. That's what you're supposed to do with items like that, though, right? You're supposed to like bury them.
I guess.
I think so.
Well,
no.
So Kevin ends up bringing it back to his house, and he starts seeing shadowy figures throughout his house, and he starts having nightmares. And a very specific nightmare, including an old woman who would attack him in the dream, and then he would wake up with bruises on his body. Any guests that slept over would have the exact same dream of being attacked by the old woman. Kevin then decides to leave the box in a shed in his backyard, and the shed's smoke alarm just starts going off on its own for no reason. And when he goes into the shed to check it out, he is hit with the smell of jasmine. So he's like,
Ooh,
okay, I got to get rid of this. So, what?
As one would.
Yes. There's an echo.
Echo,
I hear
echo,
it from
echo.
me.
Do you hear it? From me. I don't hear an echo. Continue.
I hear you.
Okay.
Of course, he decides to sell it on eBay. So the box sells on eBay in 2003 to a college student. Yeah. This college student also claims to have a horrible experience with this purchase. Some experiences to note being smelling the jasmine fragrance, electronic malfunctions, insomnia, hair loss, and waking up in the middle of the night and his apartment all of a sudden being filled with insects. So, the college student also saw some shadow figures, to add that in. Are you sure you don't hear an echo?
I'm
Is
sure.
your mic too close to the laptop? Oh.
No.
Okay.
I swear it always is. I'll be pissed if this whole thing is an echo. I have echo. I have all the echo cancellations turned on.
I think I do. It just started.
Well, I have yours turned off. Ooh, after we start talking about the divot box.
Okay.
Ew. What it's like from divot box on. It's like,
let's get this story over with then. Okay. So then the student decides... The echo's gone. Just thought I'd share that.
Okay.
So then the student decides that after 8 months, enough is enough, and back on eBay the haunted box goes. But while dealing with all of the hauntings and whatnot around the box, he is detailing all of his issues on a blog online. Very early 2000s of him. And one of the readers of his blog was a man named Jason Haxton. Jason Haxton happened to develop quite an interest in this box, and he decides to purchase it off eBay for $280. Well, so he was a museum director at the Still University Museum of Osteopathic Medicine, and he wanted to take a more scientific approach to it. He wanted to look into the box and see if maybe there was something more linear to understand to it. He didn't think that it was haunted. He thought that, I don't know what the hell he thought, but he thought that he could maybe solve it in a linear perspective. Well, Jason receives this box, and he also opens it, and he says that when he received the box in the mail, he instantly felt very sick, and it felt like when he was holding it, it felt like the box was liquid, almost. I don't know what the hell that means, but...
Ew. Yeah.
Yeah. But upon
That's good
receiving the
shit.
box, it was actually received to the museum that he worked at. There were a bunch of electronic issues that happened. The computers all shut down, and they ended up losing a bunch of important documents. The smell of jasmine filled the space. And at the same time, one of his
Again.
coworkers' grandparents suddenly died for no reason. That could have been
Well,
very
that
much
could
so
just be
coincidence,
coincidence.
yes. But
I
all of
feel
his
like that might be
coworkers
for
were very
sure.
uncomfortable with having the box there. So he took it home instead of leaving it. Yeah, they always take it
Oh,
home.
no
So upon
shit.
taking it home, he
Thanks.
starts noticing the shadow figures as well, and he starts having pretty much the same issues the other guys have had. Jason specifically started coughing up blood. Yeah, so that's not a good sign ever.
Oh.
He also started coughing up a crud-like mucus. He said it was dark, and he like couldn't quite
Ew.
figure out what it was that he was coughing up, but it was dark and cruddy. So he decides to test the box
Ew.
for biohazardous materials and whatnot.
Oh,
So, and
that's
he
pretty
thought maybe
smart.
there was something making him sick, but it tested negative for all biohazards. So he ended up reaching out to a bunch of witches and spiritualists and rabbis, and he was told to keep the box in a gold lined container to neutralize the spirit. I believe it was a rabbi who said this. Um, yes, it had to be real
Like real
gold.
gold?
Yeah, so he figured out
That's
how to make
expensive
that
box.
happen, and he did it. And all of a sudden, all of his symptoms started getting better, and everything kind of fizzled away and got normal again. The box ends up going later on to Zach Baggins, who owns a paranormal museum in Vegas, which we need to go to this museum.
This is the one that he has,
Yes,
the one
that's
that
the
Post
box.
Malone touched? That's this
Yeah.
one? Wow.
So I don't know
Oh,
if you know, but the
okay.
box is
Continue.
actually kept in a glass case, separated from everything else. And you cannot go into the room where the box is by yourself to do so. Like the general public is not allowed to see the Dybbuk box, but you can.
Yeah. Like in a very eerie, like little creepy
Yeah,
by
it's
itself
so
little
that to
room.
me says something about it. But if you do want to view it, you have to be 18 and up, and you have to sign a waiver, and you cannot do it alone. You have to go in with Zach Baggins, the owner of the museum.
Now, does Zach Baggins, does he have like stories? Like when
I
he
did
got the box,
not.
did you find stuff on that?
I wanted to, but I actually was
Oh
finishing it up.
man. Oh dang, we need to look into that because I only know about the Post Malone thing, and then like Post Malone had like a
Yeah,
lot of
his
bad luck after that.
like two wheels fell off of his plane afterwards, and then he was in a car wreck, and then his house got robbed. Post Malone didn't even touch
Yeah,
it.
like he.
What's so crazy is when Post Malone went to visit, Zach touched the box, and Post Malone was touching Zach's shoulder.
Right,
But I'm
that's
like, why
right.
is Zach not
I remember
cursed?
now. If anything
I
has
do
like
know that
happened to
he opened the
him.
box in 2020, and they had this like unveiling of it, but I don't know anything beyond that. But supposedly there are 10 real Dybbuk boxes out there, and 2 of them are in Zach Baggins' museum.
I'm hearing like
Again.
static feedback now. Like a whole lot, like really creepy.
Great. I was literally
I
nervous to
do.
cover this too, because I was like, what if I get cursed? Well, that's all I have on haunted objects for ya. We should do this again. Maybe you can do one where you cover a list of haunted objects. I'll
Ooh,
probably know
I
all of
would
them
love
because
that.
I just like read through lists after lists of haunted objects, but I didn't
Okay.
study them. There are a bunch of actually
We'll
famous
have
haunted pieces of jewelry or cursed pieces of jewelry that I did not cover. So those are still fair game for you.
well, we'll just have to wait.
That's all I have. I think that's all we have for you on haunted and cursed objects for
That's
now.
it.
For now.
For now.
For now.
Yes, for now. So for now. I guess with that, we will say
Pleasant
good night
nightmares.
and pleasant
Bye.
nightmares. Bye.